So, editorial note before I answer that question, I have a clip that I think might be really good to use. It's
great.
of an American general talking about Afghanistan. And he's like, the Taliban, they say they're fighting for Islam, but actually they're drug dealers. And we are the real mujahideen, we, the U.S. military.
The terrorists call themselves, they're the freedom fighters. They're the mujahideen. They're not. They're criminals. I think the Arabic word is takfiri. They're apostates. They hide behind Islam. They sell drugs. They kill innocent people. That's not what Islam is. The Afghan army and the American, we're the mujahideen. We're the mujahideen.
So what's amazing about this clip, I mean, obviously, for a lot of people, it's a sort of bad cultural appropriation joke, like beefy American Marine saying, we're the real mujahideen. But to me, what's really fascinating about it is that it's actually a perfect distillation of liberal war on terror discourse, right? Like this guy Neller, he's part of that generation of US military officers who have had their kind of like imperialist cultural sensitivity training, right? So he's not on the whole like Muslims are the enemy kind of stuff. I mean, maybe he thinks that, but at least that's not the discourse he's using, right? When he's saying the American military and the Afghan puppet government are quote unquote the real mujahideen, and that the Taliban don't really represent Islam, he's actually making a claim to a kind of Islamic authority, right? But even though he's not positioning himself as a Muslim or as someone in those debates. And that is what the category of jihadism does, right? Because look, if you are a Muslim believer, you might have certain ideas of like what jihad is, what counts as a jihad, what you can and cannot do during jihad. And you might have disagreements with other Muslim believers about it, blah, blah, blah. But jihadism as a category, right? Like a social sciencey category, it's super weird because people who do jihadism studies or who use the phrase jihadism generally do not believe that jihad or jihadism is any time a Muslim says that something is jihad. Right. Instead, they have like their own bespoke definitions. Like they'll say things like, oh, well, if someone claims to be doing jihad, but they like reject the nation state order, that's jihadism. Right. Or like if someone is doing jihad and doing it in a way that we don't like, that's what jihadism is. And that necessarily implies that there's other things that Muslims do that they call jihad that are not jihadist. Right. So this idea of jihadism necessarily implies a residual category of non-jihadist jihad, which, I'm sorry, doesn't make any fucking sense. Right? So when he's saying the Taliban are not jihadis, but the Afghan government are, I mean, he's not super crazy because some of the people in that Afghan puppet regime were the mujahideen of the 1980s, right, who the United States and the rest of the world supported as legitimate jihad, right? But what's really happening here is it's a power move, right? He's claiming the ability to label, who's properly doing something Islamic or improperly doing it or not, right? I think that's really what the category of jihadism is kind of doing, right? Which is why it's also funny, like people, including on the left, will unselfconsciously talk about ISIS as jihadis, but not Hezbollah as jihadis. Right? So then what you're kind of saying in a way to Hezbollah and people in Hezbollah who are believing Muslims and who believe that what they're doing is jihad is like, well, your jihad is not really jihad. Make that make sense, right? So anyway, that's why it's just a term. I mean, of course, I find myself sometimes using it as well, despite my best intentions. And I'm not saying this in the spirit of terminology policing, right? But more just pointing out the fact that this category, it's really impairing our thinking, just to put it mildly.